Yummy. Hello and welcome to what I hope will be a continuous series within the channel. Now, I make a lot of music, and I think it's fair to say that none of it is professional, especially my older stuff. While I do think I've gotten much better at recording, mixing and producing and everything, I still wouldn't class myself as a professional musician, just because I do it for fun. I don't really get any money out of it, and the quality of the songs that I output aren't up to par with what professionals make. However, I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, indie music has that flavor that professional music just doesn't, you know? When a professional producer works on a song, the artist's vision might not be fully realized because that producer or anything will always do their own thing. They won't take into account what the artist originally envisioned. Obviously with lenience, but in most cases it will be diluted by someone else's input. I'm not really someone who likes having that input being diluted. I like to have my ideas be fulfilled as I've imagined them, which is why I normally hate working with other people. However, there's no one that encapsulates the feeling of indie music, of making your own thing despite how it turns out, and no one who I like working with more than Risk 51. My good friend Risk 51, we've collabed on a couple things, and I can safely say that when we have done so, it's for the better. Every idea that he has is even crazier and wackier than what I can imagine, and it usually ends up working in my benefit, and it really helps my music. I thought that it would be funny if, without him knowing, I would just review and rate every single one of his songs to figure out which one of his albums is the best one, using maths and averages and whatnot. So I hope you enjoy today. It's going to be a long one. It's going to be way longer than I probably expect, but hopefully it should be funny. I really hope it's funny. But yeah, don't know what my echo was on. But yeah, let's get on to the rankings, and we'll see which one of Risk 51's projects I like the most. Chasing Horizons. Chasing Horizons was Risk 51's first proper full-length album, and now you can safely say that you never start off with your best. There's a learning curve and things that you take from that first experience that you then apply onto your future stuff. Like I can confirm from my first album, Bite of Frankim, which is nowhere near my best work. Chasing Horizons came out in the autumn of 2021, right off the bat of one of the worst periods in my life personally, which was lockdown. What made it even worse is that I was coming out of a pretty serious relationship. It'd been over a year, so not too long term, but still serious, and it was in the midst of that breakup that Risk 51 released their first album, Chasing Horizons. In this album, he goes through a range of situations that you'd often associate or find yourselves in during your teenage and young adult years, which obviously I relate heavily to as I'm starting to transition into that young adult period. It ranges from nostalgia to heartbreak and jealousy and all of these feelings that are complicated and that the world won't prepare us for as we're entering that stage in our life. So let's start off with the first song, High School Story, featuring DJ Flight. Now, some people would say it's ballsy to have a feature on your first actual song. Usually you'd want to introduce yourself and only yourself, but I think that the DJ Flight feature was actually quite a good idea here. What a better way to kick this off than with the catchiest song in your arsenal. The production here is great, obviously by Risk 51 standards, it's pretty good, but there's that jokey back and forth between DJ Flight that you can hear in the background, and it keeps this unserious and fun, and I think that really helps to give it that Risk 51 feel, I guess. The themes of this song explore jealousy and betrayal from a best friend who ends up kissing Risk 51's girlfriend underneath the oak tree. And it's great because everything in this song is a cliche. It's things that you've seen in any high school American movie, and it's clear that the song isn't trying to add anything new to the discussion of teenagehood. It's just exploring those ideas that we're all very familiar with and hammering them and beating that dead horse to a pulp, because it's already been done before, but it takes pride in that. And I think Risk 51 getting his friends to do vocals and the overly American voice that some of the characters do, I I know who he is. I don't want to mention any names, but I know all these people in person, and I know who's doing what voice and whatever. The stereotypical Valley Girl American voice really adds to the feeling of this being a high school story. If I were to critique anything, the guitar sounds aren't the best. I know that Risk51 doesn't own or play guitar, so he usually relies on the VST sound effects of his DAW, which aren't the best, but they work, and they're buried enough within the synths that I think it still works well. In all honesty, this is a hill that I'm willing to die on. Risk51's biggest strength is the synths. The synth work in all of his albums is the best thing, and that catches me all the time listening and thinking, wow, this is actually really good. And if it were for the fact that Risk51 tries to do stuff with guitars and stuff, I think his music would genuinely, unironically be really good, as you'll see later. I'd rate this song a solid 8 out of 10. It's not the best here, but it's pretty good. The American accents, like I said, really nail the final nail in the coffin to make this as good as it is. Hashtag go bareback. The second song here, Thinking Out Loud. Now, I have to admit that I have a massive bias towards this song because I've worked on a cover that went unreleased for this song. By the time I ended up finishing it, I wasn't really happy with it. My kind of sense of music just changed and my style had changed completely. My bias continues in that I think that this could be, with a little bit of work on the producing, the next Mr. Brightside. It's catchy, it's fucking amazing, honestly. The bridge builds up very well to the final chorus, and the fact that all of the voices come together and all the layers really sells this one for me. Like I mentioned before, I think the synths are probably the best part of Risk51's music. The best part of this song by far is the scintillating twinkly synths that happen leading up to and during the choruses. I fucking love this thing. The synth is so good. I really like what he's done with the doodle, and it gets me hype every time. It's really good. It's really good. So much so that I tried to replicate that. I didn't have a MIDI input or any sort of sequencer, so it was shit. I literally just sped up myself playing it on the piano because I couldn't play at that speed. The chorus is a masterpiece. I think it's simple. I think it's very catchy and effective, and I think that it really ties in well to the title of the song, Thinking Out Loud. Sometimes titles of the songs can be random and they don't really fit in with the overall chorus or anything like that, but I think this ties on really well. And because of all of these elements combined, I think Thinking Out Loud deserves a 10 out of 10. If this was a tier list video, I would put this in S tier, and it would probably be the only one up there. Song number 3, Fairy Tale. This song has a really cool chord progression. Chord progression on the verses, I think, is probably my favorite. It's very sweet and easy to transfer over to surf rock. I think that if I were to do a cover, it would fit in quite well with my style. People are going to think I'm weird for this one, but this reminds me of old 21 Pilots, like classic 21 Pilots, back in like regional at best. For some reason, the mixture of all of the instruments, come together, the synths and the bass and everything come together, and it does really give off the vibe of a regional at best beat. And it's fun and lighthearted, and it makes me happy. That's all the song needs to be. The message about hugging your loved ones, randomly put in the middle, a bit out of place, but it's cute and inoffensive. But I will say that the little ad-libs about saying like Riverdale and Yay do get a bit annoying, and it kind of takes me out of the song's atmosphere for a little bit. And because of that, I'll knock it down a little bit, but I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. Song number 4, Missing You. Alright, I'm going to address the elephant in the room here, first of all. Vocals on this one aren't the best. I think there are a few shaky bits. I think there's a bit, I don't know how to describe it, but I don't think that Risk51's confidence was at full here when he recorded this one, but they are sentimental. And it's like watching your kid at a talent show when they're really young. I can't relate, I don't have kids. I'm assuming this is what my parents felt. When I wasn't too good, but they were still proud of me. You know what the message is, you know where they're going for it. However, I will say that I'm not a huge fan of the rapping verses. It doesn't really do anything for me, and I think that DJ Flight is a better rapper than Risk51. If he'd got DJ Flight on this, it might have been better, but as the song is quite personal and sentimental, I think he made the right choice, just being it about himself, speaking to the person that he loves. The instrumentals are stellar though. I really like the chord progression. It's basic, but it's nice, it's simple, it's effective. The breakdown with the triplet notes, the is really chill. I really like that. That's a really good element that I personally wouldn't have thought to put in one of my songs, but it's really good. The thing I love most about the instrumentals is that the piano and the lead piano melody sound like something out of the Nintendo Wii sound font, and I can imagine it playing in the background of one of the Wii channels that you click on. And it's nice. I like it. It's not the best by, general music standards, but it works for me. And it works for what it's trying to achieve. It's melodramatic, but heartfelt. And it's simple, but it's got a good hook. And I also appreciate that the crashes at the start of some of the sections are this sort of like air pressure releasing, like rather than just a normal cymbal. It's good. I like it. Again, very creative thing that I wouldn't have put in one of my songs, but it works really well. It adds to the chill vibes of the song. I want to give this one like a 6 out of 10. I can clearly see the vaporwave influences. It sounds like something that would play on Electronic Gems, except maybe the vocal part. But yeah, 6.5 out of 10. Sounds good to me for this one. Song 5, Shooting Star. This one isn't going to be as long as the others because I have to admit I don't really like it. The guitar sounds here don't sound too bad, the acoustic, and the sound test bit at the beginning is quite funny, even if it goes along for a bit too long, but it sets off the light song that we're about to experience. I will say that there's a clear influence of some folk and country music, which isn't really my kind of thing, so I don't really feel justified in reviewing this as much as I do with the others. But the chorus sounds like a jig that like a bunch of old people would sing at the pub together, and it works, but it's just not for me. But the synth lead that comes on at the second verse really carries it for me, so because of that it goes up to a 4 out of 10. Number 6, You Broke My Heart. Now I laugh about this because this one is going to come up again, just spoiler warning, but let's start with the first one. The guitar loop here actually sounds like something out of a Juice WRLD song, and I can completely see it being used, and it's very sad and melodramatic. You can imagine what it would be like listening to RIS51's vocals on a Juice WRLD type beat. It's fucking hilarious, but it's also pretty catchy. It's a big shift from the genres and influences that we've seen throughout this album, but the booming 808s and the hi-hat triplets really sell it. He's done a good job trying to replicate that kind of sound, and I can completely understand that. And the part where he just says, I just want the pain to stop, yeah, 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 that was actually pretty good. I like those lines, they were catchy, and I enjoyed listening to them. I love that even though it doesn't have the same sound as the other songs, it still very much has that RIS51 identity with the little pads and the synths and stuff that he does in the second verse. I think that ties it into the rest of the songs just enough for it not to seem out of place in the album. And like I say, having that artist identity in each one of your songs really makes me enjoy it, because I can see a little bit into them, I suppose. It was surprising, not gonna lie, but it was good, and I think it's one of the better ones. I think it's gonna take a 9 out of 10 for me. That's it. It's actually quite good. 7, Jealous. Now, I'm gonna preface this song and the next 2 songs by saying that they start a new kind of dark pop nighttime vibe to the album, which I think is good but could have been done better, and I'll explain a bit more detail once I've covered all 3 of the songs. To start off with Jealous, I love that the rain and the effects and everything that he uses really puts me in the atmosphere of a nighttime kind of jazz bar, and that bass is really smooth. It just moves straight into my brain, and it made its home. The piano sounds with the odd chords did remind me of some jazz, like I just mentioned. I'm not opposed to it in the slightest. I quite like jazz sometimes. I like feeling fancy, but it's not who I really am. I'm a rocker. But this song does remind me of the song It's Raining Somewhere Else, written by Toby Fox, that is part of the Undertale soundtrack, and that wins it big points. I have to say, I'm not the biggest fan of the drums here. I do appreciate the change from the more fast-paced beats that we've been getting, but they still don't really work for me. But it's definitely a nighttime kind of song, and I can see someone wanting to play this song during their Getting Freaky playlist, or just trying to get someone in the mood. I reckon with a bit of help with the production and stuff, it could be easily mistaken for The Weeknd song. So, pretty good. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I think it does go on a bit, but other than that, it's good while it lasts. Number 8, Cursed Love. I like this one. The first notes kind of got me hooked in already, and I wasn't expecting this synthesized guitar sound that actually sounds quite real. I'm fairly certain it's still a VST, but if Riz51 were to tell me that this is actually a real guitar that he recorded, I would believe him. This song continues the dark/nighttime vibes of the previous one, although it does it a bit more effectively, I would say. It could have done with some heavier hitting drums and bass. It's just not the best samples that were used, but it works for what it is. It probably would have done better with a new snare. I think he could have used a different snare for this one and it would have been a lot better. The strings tie all of this together though, and they bump it up a couple spaces, because when the strings come in the second verse, it's really good. It genuinely has you feel that like big piano room jazz bar kind of thing. And yeah, it's really good. I really like it. And then obviously when they lead on to the synth sounds coming back and being at the forefront of the song for the ending, that really tied it all together. I think that would have been a perfect ending for the album, where you kind of end on this dark vibe, but then the synths come back as a sort of hope that everything's going to be better and Riz51 isn't going to stay in this dark place. It's a positive and hopeful sound at the end, but it's still kind of bittersweet. But it's really good. I really like this one, and I'd probably give it like a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, the ending really brought this one back together for me. This was really good. Number 9, Drifting Away. What the hell? I'm not happy with this one. I like the synth sounds and the beginning. They're so good. Actually, I take it back. I love the synth sounds at the beginning. It's really good, and I always thought I was going to get into this atmospheric kind of vibe. And then the guitar appears, and I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. Keeping in mind, the synths are still there, and I still very much like them. But the guitar plays a bit different to what I was expecting. It's a shame because the synths disappear quite early on into the song. I think it's a couple, like 20 seconds in. You know, as I say, I was expecting an atmospheric, light and peaceful song. You know, we've done the 2 dark ones, we can move on. The last one ended with a positive note, so maybe he's doing this whole happy thing for the 3rd one. And yeah, the final detail that I was going to mention about these 3 songs is that I think that this one would have been better placed before Cursed Love, as Cursed Love is a pretty good ending for that kind of dark sound. And this one being in the middle of the 2 just makes that kind of arc that he's going through in this album just a bit more coherent. Because from what it sounds like currently, he's gone better and then gone to shit again, which, I don't know, seems a bit cheap to me. After each chorus, this realistic kind of drum loop, I suppose, I guess it's still done digitally, but it sounds more real and the samples are much better. They're pretty good. I wish he kind of used those drum sounds and made its own song out of it, because I think they're a bit wasted on this one. There's this R&B kind of drum beat to this one, which I get where he's coming from, but it doesn't really work that well. The guitar sounds aren't as good as in Cursed Love. You can kind of tell that they're fake a bit more. But yeah, I reckon those drums would have saved it. I reckon he could have made a pretty good rock song, made it a bit more edgy. Of course, I'd say that. But yeah, it would have been cool to see. The pads coming in at the end is nice, but it's a bit too late, I reckon. Could have been a lot better if they'd used more of that synth pattern that I mentioned in the start. It was really good. Genuinely really good. Riz51, if you're seeing this, please can I sample that in one of my songs? Thank you. Unfortunately though, I'm gonna have to give this one a 3 out of 10. It didn't impress me. It's the lowest one on the album, so don't worry, the next 2 are better. But yeah. Number 10, the last song in the album is called Vikings, which is cool. I like Vikings. I'm not too deep on the lore or anything, but I think they're pretty cool. It's like astronauts and ninjas. Like, Vikings are cool. But I will say, this song is cooler. I lied. I remember being around when the discussion for this song was being had. I think Riz51 still lived in his uni dorm, and him and a flatmate were discussing how they were going to make this Viking/trap hip-hop kind of blend. And I remember thinking, this is insane. I don't know how you'd think of this. But the son of a bitch actually did it. It sounds pretty good. I like all of the sounds that he uses here. The flute sounds amazing, very medieval. I would follow anyone who plays this song into battle. It got me hyped up. I was genuinely like feeling like I was getting ready to fight the enemy. And I think that use of the war drums and stuff kind of building up to the song, and the flute itself, but also the overall bass kind of repetition that they have to the beat, it really works well, and I think it fits the time period as well as having that modern edge with the drums being added. However, I will say, as cool as this song is, it does not fit in Chasing Horizons. Chasing Horizons is experimental but very clear kind of album. You have all of the stuff about teenagehood, all of the nostalgia, all of the heartbreak, but then you just have random Viking beat that goes on for 6 minutes and has no words. So I think that it being a single or even a whole EP being dedicated to that style would have been much better than it just being tacked onto the end of this one. I think, as I say, having Cursed Love at the end with that pad, bringing it all back together to the start, looping it all, would have been a perfect way to end the album. But as it is, it's not a bad song at all. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10 just because of the pure ambition and audacity of RIS51 to do this and actually pull it off. Right, the final score for this album, I just want to let you know I am rounding down to the nearest 0.5. So if he'd gotten a 6.9, it would have been a 7. But yeah, this leaves the average score of Chasing Horizons at a 7 out of 10, which I think is a very good way of describing and rating this album. I think that number fits. So without further ado, let's move on to the second LP, Lost. Welcome back to my review of RIS51's music. This time we're going to go over the second LP he released called Lost. Now, I'm really glad that these albums are getting shorter and shorter because that last segment took me way too long. For you guys, it's been about 4 seconds of transition, which I so magically edited, but for me, it's been about a month. Because I guess I'm just really good at procrastinating. As I say, this album is slightly shorter and definitely more laid back than Chasing Horizons was. The feeling I get from this one is that RIS51 got the chance to just sit back, relax, and make some really chill music, which I certainly appreciate. It's nice to have in the background whenever I'm doing something else like cleaning or playing video games or whatnot. Where it differs from RIS51's other projects is that this is a purely instrumental LP, so there aren't any vocals included in any of the songs, which all of other RIS51 albums do have. Just like I was saying, I think nothing encapsulates the casual vibe of this album like the first song and opener, Casual. This first song is great at introducing the bouncy and synthy energy that's going to be present throughout the whole album, and the vibe I get from this one is that RIS51 didn't really put much thought into most of the elements. He just kind of made a really casual and relaxed song on a rainy evening, perfectly encapsulating the feeling of having nothing better to do one evening than just make some music. I love the main synth lead with the quick notes, and I think that the pads are unobtrusive enough, hang back a bit to let the other segments of the song shine, including that main synth lead. All the segments that come in, it's not just one or another. I know that with a lot of vaporwave music, for example, there's a lot of repetition of the bass elements of a song with just new and different ideas put in to add variation, and I think that he does it really well with Casual. The more laid back drums here are also really chill and bring all of this together perfectly, which I really like, and I can see this being like one of the Minecraft music discs. It genuinely does kind of sound like and fit the vibe of, you know, being a music disc in Minecraft, and I think there's no other better way to describe it. It just sounds like a Minecraft music disc, and one of the good ones at that. I think I'll give this one a 9 out of 10 just because it's just a really good opener and it really sets the mood for the rest of the album. Number 2 is Escape, which I must say, this album is off to a great start. 2 bangers in a row. The first thing to notice here is the atmospheric sound of children playing in the background, which adds just a lot of texture in the song. And I love that the synth notes and chords are getting louder and louder until it builds up and the bleepy bloopy stuff comes in. The drums are really simple, but I think that they're implemented well, and I think that the riser in the song is really well done. The second lead line in the song with the deeper sound is just so infectious, and I think it really helps the song stand out. I think that the build up in the middle of the song is also electrifying, and the whole song just makes you want to nod your head along. It's a bop. All the synth work in this song was done amazingly, and I continue to stand and die on the hill that RIS51's best attribute is all the synths. I'm going to give this one another 9 out of 10. I can't decide whether I like this or Casual more, so I'm just going to give them both the same score. Number 3, Disco. With a funky slap bass line and muted pads, I think that this definitely sells the feeling of a disco. I can completely see this being a Mario Kart soundtrack for a track that's set maybe in a nighttime city, which we have a lot of now. There's a great fake out with the first rise of the song that leads into another rise, which builds up perfectly, only to then drop the ball. Unfortunately, I don't think it sticks the landing when it comes to setting up that final run of the song. I think that the build-up is way too much for what we actually get, which is essentially just the same loop from the beginning, and I think that he could have added more instruments or maybe some more energy to the song to make it feel more earned. Because, you know, having a fake out build up and then having another one leading to just nothing was a bit anticlimactic. It kind of felt like when you're about to sneeze but you don't. However, the deeper bass line that comes in later on in the song and the layers of synth that start to unfold, it's back to being a bop, I think. It makes me feel very funky fresh, but it's not the best here. I'll give this one a 6.5 out of 10, and only because what it gave me wasn't enough and I wanted more of it, which unfortunately it wasn't able to deliver on. Number 4, Indifferent. The highlight here is definitely the bass, this booming bass line with this hoppy and vibey energy. The synth sounds and the pads aren't the best here, but they're not the worst either. There's a soft synth lead that kind of sounds a bit like a trumpet, but in a much better digital way that fits the vibe a lot more. And it's all randomly but perfectly complemented by these random steel pan sound effects, which I don't know why he chose to do this, but it works. This song could be better. It's not the best in the album, but then again, the bar was set quite high by the first 2 tracks. It could fit somewhere like in the Undertale soundtrack. It has kind of similar sound fonts to that. So because of that, I'll give it a 7 out of 10, which I think is probably the most they could earn. Number 5, Journey. Now, the first chord in this song sounds exactly like Party Rock Anthem, and I can't unhear it, and if anything, it's a bit of a detriment to the song because it just makes me wish I was listening to Party Rock Anthem, because it's really good. Party Rock is in the house tonight. Everybody just have a good time. This song has a very strong structure with the spacey synths, and I like the vibe of this one, but I think that where it falls short is with the drums. I think that a simple disco boom clap beat would have fit better than the current drums in the song, but as it stands, I don't hate it either. There's enough variation with the sounds that I don't think you can notice the song's repetitiveness, which calls back to what I was talking about making vaporwave or synthwave music, which I think that RIS51 was definitely aiming for with this whole album. I think a 6 out of 10. There's nothing really special about this one, but then again, there's nothing to drag it down too much. I just feel a bit indifferent, like the last song here. Number 6, Lonely. Now, I love the initial sample used at the start of the song. It flutters between your left and right ears, and it just adds so much to the song texture-wise. And I'm really glad that he implemented that throughout the song, and not just at the beginning like most artists would probably have done. The drum sounds aren't the best here, but they work nicely for the song, and I think that they pair well with the deeper bass line that he's going for here, which then also pair nicely with the droning synth sounds that he has on the latter half of the song. This one is cool and a bit darker than the previous ones, and I can imagine it playing during a nighttime chase scene like in a movie like Drive, and I love Drive, so I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10 for just fulfilling that need and that vibe for me. Number 7, Run Theme, or I should say Run Theme. Hope my family didn't hear that. If the previous one gave me a bit of a Drive vibe, this one goes all the way in. It starts off a bit underwhelming, scattered drums, not really any direction going on, but the second half of the song makes up for the shortcomings of the first entirely. It's this synthwave outrun beat that just comes out of nowhere but completely fits in with what the album was building up to. I really like it. I can definitely imagine myself driving at night to it. It's only a shame because it doesn't last longer, but at the same time I think that that might be a good thing. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It is just one note on the bass playing for the whole time, so any longer probably would have seemed a bit repetitive and boring. So I think that RIS51 chose when to cut it off, and he made the right choice. This one is definitely another high-ranking one. I think an 8.5 out of 10 is probably justified just for the second half of the song. Number 8, moving on. To start off here, I just want to say I love the rain sound effects that he has in the beginning of the song. It's another great bit of texture from this album that is just rich with background sounds. The overall vibe of the song is very positive and hopeful, and midway through the song it becomes this beautiful atmospheric piece with tons of layers and tons of reverb, which I love. The chord progression here serves well for this positive outlook that this song seems to have on the topic of moving on. I think this song just reminds me of the, and please forgive me for how I pronounce this word, it's very hard to do it when you're British, Fruitiger Aero or Fruitiger Metro Retro vibe. This kind of reminds me of Fruitiger Retro songs, and that final arpeggio could be plucked straight out of the Minecraft Volume Beta soundtrack. I think that it's really good and nostalgic for that. Another high ranking one, I think this one will probably get an 8 out of 10. Number 9, Synth Valley. Now, as a closer, I just want to say that I think that this one is definitely better than Vikings was. If you haven't watched the previous section, I go on about how I think Vikings would have been better fit in its own project and having some of the other songs reshuffled in the album to make a really good closer. But this one sticks the landing and it really helps to drive the album in my view. The chords here are really good, and the disco style drums with the hi-hats on the offbeat are also amazing, and something I was waiting to hear more from this album, but at the same time I'm not complaining. The double claps at the end of each bar also always get me going, so that's another thing it's got going for it. The synths here aren't the best out of RIS51's work. They sound a bit too clean and not smoothed out like I'd normally like them. I think RIS51 usually adds some sort of reverb or other effects to make them not sound like just a normal synthesizer, which he doesn't do on this one. Not sure why, but I must say that I do love the phaser effect he had on some of the chords. It's just really groovy stuff. Like I say, it's a good closer, and I definitely prefer it over Vikings, and because of that it will probably get a higher rating than Vikings did. I'll give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Rounding up the scores for all the songs, it gives this album a rating of 8 out of 10, which I think is very fitting once more. Overall, I personally like Lost more than I did Chasing Horizons, even though it doesn't reach the highs that that album did. On the other hand, it also doesn't reach the lows that it did too. I think this one just has a lot more middle of the pack songs with a couple of great ones to bump the score up, and I really enjoyed it. Now let's move on to the third RIS51 project, Reflections. Hello again and welcome back. It hasn't been as long as last time because I actually want to get this video over and done with, because I have a few other video ideas that I want to share with you guys as well. We're going to be going over RIS51's third album, Reflections, which is definitely a new and interesting direction that RIS51 has taken with his music. This one has a lot less synths and a lot more royalty-free guitar loops, which I don't inherently hate. It still sounds alright, it's just not my favorite. But let's see mathematically if this album is better than the previous two. This is definitely a more melancholic feeling album. There's a few of the themes in some of these songs that are a lot darker and heavier than other themes which RIS51 has explored in his previous works. I think that it benefits from it, especially with the new instrumentation. I think those two complement each other very well. And I think we should probably start off with the first track here, We Were Friends. This opening track is really good at setting the heavier and darker mood of this whole EP. It already tackles themes like a girl leaving RIS51 and then getting her nudes leaked online by a new guy she's seeing, which leaves RIS51 a little bit confused and lost. Just like the previous album, I'm not gonna draw a whole Family Guy thing again. That took me way too long for like a split second of video, but it is a really good song. Like I said, RIS51 feels alone in this song to the point where he stops giving a shit, as per the lyrics. The drum samples here sound really good, much better than before, if not a bit quiet, but it's made up for by this cool bass line that he's added in. The interesting thing about it being that the chord progression of the royalty-free loop that he uses is only 2 chords. Well, RIS51 doesn't just do those 2 chords for the bass line. During the verses, he actually switches to a 4-chord chord progression, which I think was very smart and still works without sounding dissonant to the main loop. I think that more than makes up for the quiet drums. This one also still has a lot more synths than the later ones do, so there's still that element of RIS51 electronically that I really like. The vocal work here is also one of the better ones that he's done. I don't think that he missed any notes to the point of me being pulled out of the song or the whole experience, and I think that for what it is, it actually sounds really good. It's clear that RIS51 took a lot more Midwest emo influence and a bit of a different approach to writing this song, starting from one bass point, which is the loop, and then adding on different layers into that. And because of that, I can unironically see myself listening to this song just in my own personal time. I think it's really good. I'm gonna give We Were Friends a 9 out of 10. It's a great start to the EP. Number 2, Silhouette, featuring Mink. There is definitely a pattern here because Riff 51 seems to start all of his albums with his best songs, which is good because it helps, you know, the listeners get hooked in earlier on. But this one is another banger and I really like it. Unlike the last song, I know that the guitar loop here was recorded live, and I believe that Mink, being Riff 51's brother, was the one who did it, and he did a really good job. A few extra positives on this song are the little doo-doo-doo guitar fill every once in a while. I think it's every 4 beats. I really love it. It's very catchy and infectious. The bass line is actually really done well, and I think that there's this rhythmic element to the bass that suits the song quite well. In terms of the chord progression, I think it's just super catchy. As I think of the whole song, it's just a really catchy tune, and I think that the little mistakes in the guitar playing give it character, which I also do a lot in my songs as well. I keep little errors and stuff, just because there's no point in polishing a turd. I'm joking, this is a good song. But yeah, it's a really catchy song. I really like the atmosphere. Again, another banger. The vocals did kind of throw me off a bit because it starts off with this really obnoxious Midwest emo type, like really corny American accent, but then it kind of neutralizes towards the end of the song. And I think that Mink's higher pitch vocals kind of fit with Riff 51's lower register a lot well, and they pair nicely together. The themes in this song are also interesting. It's kind of going back to that whole theme from Chasing Horizons of being in high school, but this time tackling it from the perspective of someone who's been heartbroken and just can't move on from the relationship. You know, she broke his heart into a million pieces. Whoa, good song. I'm gonna give this one a 9.5 out of 10. It's another banger, and yeah. Number 3, Nightmare. Talk about a tone change. This one is very much a sad song, and it's kind of interesting to me. It kind of feels like a Juice WRLD song with the acoustic guitar loop and the sad feeling and everything. Risk 51 is calling himself a loser here and listing all the things that make his life miserable, though at the same time he acknowledges that those things are consequences of his own actions. And this becomes a problem because it gets to a point where Risk 51 considers if he would be better off dead than living how he currently is. He is unable to regain the trust of his former love, who has now moved on, and he's well aware of his mistakes. The gliding synth in the second verse is probably the highlight for me here, and as far as these sad boy guitar loops Risk 51 songs go, this is probably one of the better ones. It's emotional and there's a lot of reverb, which I love, and I think it just brings it all together nicely. Another pretty good one, to be fair. I think I'll give Nightmare an 8 out of 10. I think that's a fair assessment. Number 4, Why Did You Leave Me? Now, I have a personal story of this song which is really funny. Sometimes, about once a month, there's this open mic type night near where we live, and so I went to watch Risk 51 do his thing, he went to watch me do my thing, but his brother, Mink, actually went up and performed this song with him, and it was so funny because Risk 51 isn't really someone who takes his music very seriously, but Mink is even worse, and halfway through the song, Mink just rips his shirt off and kneels on the ground and starts yelling, "Why did you leave me?" over and over again, and it was so funny. I'll put up a drawing of what it looked like. This song starts off strongly. The guitar sounds are really good and the main riff is addictive. The synths, though, are where this song excels. The synths sound beautiful here, especially after the chorus with the breakdown. The synth leads are just perfect. The drums are actually one of the better ones in Risk 51's music, and it's very nicely complemented by the bass line, which has some really good rhythmic elements to it once more. I think Risk 51 has great chord progressions here, and they really work. Most of them are quite pop song sounding. You got that 4-chord progression, basic line, but I think that he does it in a way that I haven't really heard before. He mixes different chords in different ways that a lot of pop doesn't, and I think that that keeps his music very interesting, and it's best applied here. I love all the layers in the final chorus, and you got these synths and sounds fluttering and waving about, and because of all of this, I would feel guilty not to give this song anything less of a 10 out of 10. This is so good. This is one of my favorite Risk 51 songs. Unfortunately, it is followed up by probably the worst. Number 5 is Dropped Out of College, which I actually kind of helped co-write right in the beginning stages. Me and Risk 51 have a song called Boys Will Be Boys, and on the same day that we wrote that song, we also wrote Dropped Out of College, but then he kind of just took it and went with it. I didn't really hear much about it until the song was released. This song is fine. song is fine, song is fine, this song is fine, song is fine, this song is fine, song. But for real though, this song is repetitive, and calling it repetitive is an understatement. It's 80% the chorus. And it just repeats, I'll be fine, I'll be fine, I'll be alright, I'll be fine. I don't understand the choice made here. It's a silly one, it's a fun one I guess, but you know, it follows up the best Risk 51 song, and so far it could have been a perfect EP. This is definitely not my favourite song, which is quite disappointing because so far this album has had some amazing tracks. I think my main criticism would be obviously the repetitiveness, but also the crash sounds that he uses. So the drums are really loud for no reason. They're just ear-piercingly loud. Thankfully though, I don't think this song was meant to be taken seriously. I think Risk 51 was just having fun with this one, which is fair enough, but unfortunately it doesn't really work for me. This is the lowest rated song by Risk 51 at a 2 out of 10. Number 6, Club Bathroom, featuring Mink and Elksana. Straight away, I love the arpeggios at the beginning of the song, and I think that the house/EDM bass line really works well for setting the scene of being in the club bathroom. Everything about the drums is laid out well, and it does remind me of a club banger kind of song. It's just that the actual samples that he uses aren't the best, and they kind of feel a bit cheap. The song itself is actually quite well done. I think that the Mink verse is probably my favorite. It's really well rapped. I think that the chorus is a bit bland and uninteresting, but they were probably doing that on purpose because a lot of club music is meant to be like that. I think Elksana, the second feature in this song, did a really good job with her verse. I think her vocals were very beautiful, if not a bit drowned down by the mix, but other than that, it was super catchy and I really enjoyed listening to that. I think her voice, more so than Risk 51's voice, suits the auto-tune effect really well, and I think that that worked well to accentuate her good qualities. I'll probably give this one like a 6.5 out of 10. It's not my favorite because it's not my favorite genre to listen to, but it's still really well done for what it was trying to achieve. I think with a little bit of work put into this one, it could be one of his best songs. Number 7, and the last song here, You Broke My Heart Too. Yes, if you're wondering, he used the same song from back in Chasing Horizons twice. The same song. I've played them side by side. I could not tell the difference. Okay, the only difference is that this one is actually featuring DJ Flight, which if you remember was back in High School Story, all that like 40 minutes back. But DJ Flight actually ends up rapping some of the verses, and that's pretty much the main difference. Actually, that was a bit of a lie. The song is the exact same up until the second chorus. After that, it shifts from the first one, and DJ Flight does his own third verse, and it single-handedly saves the song for me. It's really good. DJ Flight is still one of my favorite features in Risk 51's music. I can hear the emotion behind DJ Flight's delivering of those lyrics, and I think that this is one of Risk 51's best collaboration efforts. Overall, the flow isn't bad at all. I think as far as rap music goes, Risk 51 hasn't really quite got it yet, but in this song it's really not that bad. It's just the same song again, but with some extra bits, which I can't complain about because the extra bits actually make it a lot better, and because of that I'll probably give it a 9 out of 10. Rounding up the scores for this album, it gives Reflections an 8 out of 10. Rounding up the scores for this album, it gives Reflections a total of 8 out of 10, which I think is deserved. Personally, I prefer Lost just because I love electronic and ambience and atmospheric music, but it's a great effort by Risk 51. All of the songs here, with the exception of Dropped Out of College, were really, really good, and I don't think I really rated any of them badly, except for Dropped Out of College, which deserved it. I think the only criticism I could lay on this album, other than Dropped Out of College, is that having You Broke My Heart as a closer isn't really the best, but I don't think that this was meant to be a full-fledged serious album. I think Risk 51 just wanted to put music that he'd made and songs that he'd made together in one project, and it works fine for that. But other than that was great. Let's move on to the final album done by Risk 51, These Nights. Right, yeah, I think this shirt is a much better fit for the color of my acoustic guitar than me wearing no shirt. But hi! You guys know the drill by now. We're here for Risk51's fourth and final album, These Nights. I won't deliberate too much this time. I'll just jump straight into reviewing the songs because this one is way shorter and it's probably going to take me not as much time to edit and everything like that. And I'm really excited to get this video out for you guys, so hence why I might be talking a bit fast. One precursor that I want to give to this album is that all of the songs feature auto-tune more heavily, which to some artists I think is a detriment, but in Risk51's case I think that he's implemented it very well, and I think that it actually suits the vibe of all of the songs here as well. So I have no complaints about the auto-tune. Maybe in a specific song I might nitpick something, but as a whole I think that it's really well done. Right. We're starting off with number 1, which is These Nights, the title track, and bold of him to start the album straight with the title track. I say that, I am working on one album right now where the title track will be the same as the album name. But for my previous album, Childish Mindset, I kept Childish Mindset, the song, to last, because I think that, you know, everything. No complaints here though, no problem with the placement of this song. My problem is, this one takes a bit more of a trap / hip hop approach, which isn't really something that I listen to. And a lot of these songs actually are more genres that I'm not really too familiar with, so I won't be judging them too much based on the instrumentals and the actual music. I'll be focusing primarily on how they make me feel and what the lyrics represent. I say that, I actually have no notes about the lyrics, but we'll go with it. Like I said, I don't really have a problem with this being a more trap / hip hop thing. I just wasn't expecting it based off of the album cover, to be honest with you. I wasn't expecting the album to go in this direction, but hey, look, let's see. Even though I don't really listen to these genres too much, I do understand from what I've heard of it that Risk51 is doing a pretty good job at emulating this, with the hi-hats having triplets in it, pretty basic drum loops, and the chord progression actually being quite catchy and short, so that kind of loops around and keeps the listener's attention. I can completely see what Risk51 was going for here. It just didn't really capture my attention as much because I don't listen to it, but I can understand the goal. And because of that, I'll probably give it like a fair 7 out of 10. Like I say, there's not much for me to talk about here because I don't feel right in judging something that isn't meant for me. Number 2, Relentless. Now this is much more up my alley. This kind of sounds like an early 2010s club song, which I really appreciate. It kind of sounds like something that you'd hear on those Summer Electro Hits CDs. Not sure if anyone else had the Summer Electro Hits CDs. I had it up till 5 and I loved each one of them. But like I said, I really like this one. I think that the square waves in the breakdown give this kind of like glitchcore flavor to the mix, which I also really like listening to. The drums here are really good as well. They just power through with a boom bap throughout the whole song, which really works well with the deep droning bass that he has here as well. The bass isn't so much a bass line as it is just the notes filling in the lower registers of the song. That mixed with the deeper synths in the chorus makes it all sound super drony and huge and powerful, which I really enjoyed. The only thing is, I would say that it could probably be a bit louder in the mix and make it sound even more potent, I suppose. I absolutely love how the lyrics here are literally just a list of all of the shitty things that happened throughout Risk51's life. He goes over the previous years and what happens. Apparently in 2018 everyone just wanted to break up with him, which is hilarious the way he says it. And overall the song circles back to the title quite well, which is just talking about how relentless life has been for Risk51. And you know, I've been there for a few of those years and I can agree with him that it has been a bit relentless on him. This is a great song. I really like this one. I like this one better than These Nights for obvious reasons. This is just more to my appeal. I'm probably going to give this one a 9 out of 10. Number 3, Shitty Apartment. Now, to start off with, this song has this reverb effect on the drums during the intro, which I don't really think sound that good. I think that maybe something like a distortion, maybe having it rise, maybe like a low pass or something would have been better for this one. But it's interesting. I like hearing different things, and what Risk51 has brought to the table is what he has done, and I appreciate him for that. Just not for me. This song kind of sounds like an OG Risk51 song, with the real sounding drums mixed with the synth bass and leads and everything. It's this non-serious kind of song with just funny lyrics, which I'll get to in a second. It kind of feels like a reimagining of Thinking Out Loud. The arpeggios during the chorus really solidified that for me, but at the same time I don't think that it is as good as Thinking Out Loud because that song is my favorite. It's so good. This song is like if you asked an AI to come up with a Risk51 song and it would do exactly this, and I'm not complaining. I absolutely love love it. The lyrics here are just talking about a girl who has a shitty apartment, and that is a reflection of her poor life choices, or maybe just the situation she's found herself in. And a few of the lines actually did make me laugh quite a bit, specifically one about her cat shitting on his pillow and her just picking it up with her hand and throwing it out the window. Another line that I really like in the second verse, I think maybe it might be the pre-chorus, is maybe I'm just being a little dramatic, it's not as if she was a crack whore addict, which is just so Risk 51 to say. As I say, I completely see this sitting alongside other songs in Chasing Horizon like High School Story or Thinking Out Loud, and I think that maybe if Risk 51 did a best of EP or album, these would probably be mixed together quite well. As I said, it is like Thinking Out Loud, but it's still not as good as it, so because of that, I think it's only fair to give it a 9.5. It's almost there, but nothing can top Thinking Out Loud. That's the best one. It's a really solid track. I really enjoyed this one. Number 4, Stars in My Eyes. Again, not really something that I would listen to, but I can understand and give it props for what it's done. I think that the 808s sound really good here, and he's kept them in key, which I think a lot of artists struggle with. Really, really good. And the auto-tune is the best it's ever been on a Risk 51 song. I love that the risers coming up to each section of the song are like these stings or string swelling, and it's just like, and it gets louder. It's perfect. It's great. He could have just had a reverse hi-hat or, you know, anything like that, but no, this was really good. I really like it, and it adds texture to the song. The production is also really good. I think it's one of the better ones in this album, and I think that DJ Flight was also a really good addition to this. I think he did a really good job with his verse. And once more, because it's not really something I listen to, even though I think he did a good job on this, I'm still going to give him a 7.5 out of 10. I think I prefer it over These Nights, but again, it's not really my favorite out of Risk 51's styles that he does. Number 5, Want Me Back, featuring Elksana. I know how to pronounce her name now. I love the acoustic guitar samples here. I think that they sound rich and real, but unfortunately the drums don't sound that good, and specifically the snare sounds a bit cheap. Elksana's vocals are a lot clearer than in Club Bathroom, which I believe is her previous appearance, and a lot easier to hear. I think that her singing is what makes the song as special as it is. I think if it was just Risk 51 singing this, it wouldn't have been as gravitated to. And I think that the deeper vocals mixing in the chorus actually elevated it a lot more. I think that they pair nicely with her higher pitch, and those deeper vocals in the chorus actually help the song stand out a lot. The synths here are great, but I mean, what can I say? That's just a given with Risk 51. I'm probably going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Number 6, and the final song in this EP, Tell Me. I just want to start off by saying that this is a great song. The drums in particular sound super unique, and they have a lot of personality compared to Risk 51's other songs, which I think use a lot of the same samples. The main riff and loop of the song is also really catchy, and it's not annoying or anything like that, so I don't have any complaints towards it. The bass line here was simple, but it really merged with the drums, tying this whole song together nicely. The vocal performance here is one of the best that Risk 51 has given. The auto-tune is very clear, but it's not annoying or obnoxious, and his vocal delivery really sells the pain of being with someone who needs constant attention and approval from other people. It's short and sweet, but it caps off this EP wonderfully. I think an 8 out of 10 is very much deserved here. Right, I guess the final score for the final album by Risk 51. This album gets an 8 out of 10 if we're rounding up or down to the nearest 0.5, which I stated was the rule that I was working on in one of the previous sections. If we're going into more detail, this one is actually the highest rated one at 8.12. Which just barely edged out Reflections, I think. This mainly goes to show the consistency of Risk 51's work. He's stayed within that 7 or 8 out of 10 limit, and I think that that is more than fair for the kind of stuff that he makes. This has been a really fun project for me because I'm able to analyze something that a friend has made and see how he's processed things that we've gone through or that he's gone through and turned it into this music, which, despite what everyone else who knows us would say, is actually quite great. I've really enjoyed doing this, and I'm sure that he'll love hearing my genuine and honest criticism, but also review and all of the compliments that I've given all of his work and production in this project. As I've previously stated, even though I personally love Lost, and I think that it's my favorite out of all of the albums, I think that these final 2 EPs were just as good and obviously better, judging by my rankings of them. Risk 51 is just really good at having collabs. I think that he knows where to put each one of the artists he collaborates with with. He puts them in songs that really fit their style. He's got really catchy riffs. This is the main thing I have to say about RIS51 songs, other than the synths, is how catchy they are. Even though they're not the best produced or mixed, you still can't help but nod along or tap your foot, because he's just really good at writing songs, which I think is his strong suit. I think that overall These Nights is a great continuation and a really good sticking of the landing, you know, for all of his previous works. I think that with Chasing Horizons, he was just kind of getting to grips with his style and is kind of like a toddler wobbling along, and you know, he had a few misses, but overall the album was fine. And then with Lost, he tried something new, which went really well, at least for myself. And then he's kind of come back to that original style with Reflections, and especially in These Nights, there's a lot of OG RIS51 flavors in this album. Overall, I think that the RIS51 project is really good, and it's a shame because I know that my friend is thinking of ending his RIS51 career and just focusing on doing music with other people, which is good news and bad, because obviously I love listening to this stuff and I loved reviewing it. But it also means that we might potentially start a project together called Blisk Music, which is a mixture of RIS51 and Bloodlime, hence Blisk, but also we entered an abandoned Toys R Us in our town recently and took a picture with spray paint on the wall, which we didn't realize actually said Blisk. After months of being there, we saw the picture again and went, oh my god, that's literally us. And so hence the name. But you know, it's great news for me, potentially great news for you guys. But with all that being said, RIS51, I think you've done an amazing job with all of these albums, and I'm really excited to hear anything else that you make in the future. And if you want, I'll also review anything else that you make in the future. Yeah, I mean, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I guess if you want to subscribe or like the video, please do. It will really help me a lot. I kind of want to make this a more common thing, so if I get the chance to be a YouTuber as well as making music, I think I'll be amazing, and I hopefully won't have to work a 9 to 5 again. Honestly, thank you all for watching so very much, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Goodbye!